New developments in the worldwide manhunt for the shooter who opened fire at a nightclub in Istanbul on New Year's Day. The Turkish government announcing that it has established the identity of the gunman, but is yet to publicly name that suspect. This after authorities arrested 5 people earlier this morning in connection with that nightclub attack. Joining me now is the Clarion Project national security analyst and Liberty University professor of counterterrorism, Ryan Mauro. Ryan, good to see you. What do you make of the progress that authorities have made so far in trying to track this suspect down in the arrest that we've seen?
Well, I'm concerned. I don't want to judge the Turkish authorities conducting the investigation, but generally speaking, ISIS-type terrorists want to die in the attack that they're conducting. The fact that he escaped tells me that he is planning another attack. He's probably still in Turkey, and he has a round 2 planned. And so I'm very concerned about it. There were a lot of false reports out about the identity, and it's been a few days, and only now, a few hours ago, they said that they've positively identified who it is based off of fingerprints. So that delay is also concerning to me, that they just didn't right off the bat have a list of suspects and say, this is the guy.
Ryan, I think what's really interesting about these reports is that this is not a case where ISIS inspired somebody because they looked at their, online magazine or looked at their Twitter or something like this. It appears, and we're still waiting for the authorities to say, that this actually may have been directed from ISIS, in Syria, in Iraq, potentially. Again, still waiting for all the details. And if that's the case, if it's directed and not inspired by ISIS, doesn't that speak to actually the relevance that ISIS still has in Syria, even though we're claiming that we've made a lot of gains against them over the past 6 months?
Yes, a lot of it will depend on when he was trained and also where he was trained. We don't know for a fact that he was trained in Syria just yet. A lot of that is an assumption based on how skilled the attack was, for lack of a better word. If he came from Central Asia and he was trained there, then we have a big story on our hands that ISIS is able to professionally train terrorists in other places. So we don't know yet, but the general consensus right now is that he was professionally trained somewhere, and that's very concerning. I'm also still concerned about the reaction of the Turkish government, because in the past, when there have been terrorist attacks on Turkish soil, yes, they'll talk about ISIS or whoever perpetrated the attack, but then in the days following that, there's a tendency to blame the United States and the West and to get into conspiracy theories, and then the hatred over the attack is then directed towards us. So we have to remember that even though we work with Turkey on things like ISIS, they are still really an adversary if we're being honest with ourselves.
So one of the questions, you're seeing this, what does it mean for us? I think people see these kinds of events happen. It terrifies folks, but what does it mean for our Americans and for us right now?
Well, the immediate impact is that it helps radicalize other people. There truly is a lot of positive news when it comes to taking territory away from ISIS. But you don't hear about it a lot, largely because an attack like this happens and then that gets all of the attention. Success breeds success when it comes to ISIS. If there is a successful attack, then it is viewed as Allah's endorsement, that God is blessing their interpretations of their faith and blessing what they are doing. And so when you have an attack like this, then others will say, ISIS might be losing territory, but look, they're still succeeding, so following them is still the right path, and that has direct repercussions for the United States.
In fact, Ryan, Turkish news media is reporting that the attacker came to Turkey from Syria, where he was radicalized. So that raises the issue of Syrian refugees entering Europe in the U.S., does it not?
It sure does. There have been conflicting reports, and the story changes quite frequently, especially over the past 2 days from the reports I've seen. But when it comes to the issue of Syrian refugees, the issue that you have there is not just of ISIS members implanting themselves in the flow of refugees to Europe and the United States, but what about those that come over to the United States or Europe and have precursor radical beliefs that are not quite at the ISIS level, but they're radical enough that they can then escalate over time and become radicalized later. So it's not always just about a terrorist already having someone that supports them. It's about bringing someone else that's a nonviolent radical to the violent stage later on.
Ryan, it was great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Ryan Mauro, take care. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Coming up,